Have you ever wondered why the chosen ones often seem to walk alone? What does it really mean to be one of the chosen in the spiritual plan, and how does it reflect in our daily lives? These are the questions we will explore in today's video. We will see how solitude, far from being a heavy burden, can be a hidden blessing and a confirmation that you have been called for something greater. Loneliness is a theme that deeply touches many people who has never felt that void or disconnection even in the midst of so many. But what if this loneliness is part of a bigger plan? What if this feeling of being alone is proof that you are destined for a grand mission? Throughout this video, we will unravel this mystery and understand how loneliness can be essential for those who carry a special purpose. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more uplifting and transformative content. How to find peace in solitude. Loneliness may seem like an inhospitable territory, but if viewed with the right eyes, it becomes fertile ground for finding peace and clarity. When a person moves away from the outside noise and starts to listen to their own heart, they make room for something greater, the connection with God and themselves. Meditation, for example, is an ancient practice that helps in this process. Imagine yourself sitting in a quiet place, breathing deeply, letting your thoughts flow as you draw closer to the divine. With each breath, you feel more connected to your purpose, closer to the spiritual wisdom you seek so much. Praying in moments of solitude also transforms this experience. Prayer is not just talking to God, but listening to Him. Prayer can calm an anxious mind and bring clarity in the face of challenges. When the soul is restless, prayer offers answers that seem to come directly from the heart of Christ, as if He was saying, "I am here by your side." This spiritual dialogue paves the way for deep introspection and strengthens the connection with the divine purpose, even in moments of isolation. Writing in a journal is a practical way to organize thoughts and bring light to what is often covered by the confusion of everyday life. Putting on paper the emotions that arise in solitude is an act of reflection and healing. A suggestion is to set aside a moment of the day to note your prayers, your challenges, and the psalms that touch your heart. This helps not only to understand what is happening in your mind, but also to create a record of your spiritual growth along the journey. In addition to meditation, prayer, and writing, spending time in nature can be a source of renewal and inspiration. Walking in a park or contemplating the sunset reconnects you with divine creation and reminds you that there is beauty even in the simplest moments. Just as David found strength in tending the sheep, you can find peace in appreciating God's handiwork, feeling His presence in every detail of creation. Instead of moving away from moments of solitude, it is possible to embrace them as an opportunity for spiritual growth. Loneliness can be seen as a personal retreat, a period that prepares us for the challenges ahead. Facing the feelings that arise in this space can be uncomfortable, but it is in this discomfort that the key to transformation is found. Thus, loneliness ceases to be a burden and becomes an invitation to introspection and the discovery of your true purpose. In short, loneliness is not an end in itself, but a means to something greater. By changing your perspective and seeing loneliness as a space for spiritual connection, you will find the strength needed to continue your journey with faith and confidence. Like a shepherd guiding his sheep, God also guides us through the deserts of life, preparing us for what is to come. And often, it is in this silence that the deepest answers are revealed. Loneliness as a sign of a calling. Feeling isolated, even among crowds, can be a powerful sign that you have been chosen for something grand. It's not uncommon for those with a divine purpose to experience this disconnection, as their destiny often separates them from the concerns and distractions of the outside world. This feeling of loneliness is an opportunity to look within and seek the spiritual wisdom that will guide your journey. Remember that Christ also felt this loneliness, even when surrounded by his disciples. He knew that his mission was unique, and just like him, you too are being called for something special. This loneliness can be confusing and painful, but it carries a greater purpose. Instead of resenting this feeling, learn to embrace it. This separation from the world doesn't mean you are lost. On the contrary, it is a clear indication that you are being shaped for something that many won't understand. Great spiritual leaders like Moses and John the Baptist faced periods of isolation before fully understanding their missions. Spiritual isolation is a sign that something unique is reserved for you. Loneliness often creates a space where a person can hear the voice of God more clearly. The world may be full of distractions and noise, but in solitude, you find yourself in tune with your mission and the divine. It can be the perfect moment to ask, what is the purpose of all this? Maybe you feel out of place in your social circles, but that's not by chance. It's an opportunity to connect deeply with your calling, something that doesn't align with the common expectations around you. Embracing loneliness also means recognizing that you are on the right path. Throughout history, many of the chosen ones have faced this challenge before fulfilling their missions. Just as David was set aside before being crowned king, you may be in a period of preparation. While everyone around you seems to be following a predictable path, you are being prepared for a mission that transcends the ordinary. This difference can be hard to accept at first, but it brings with it a sacred responsibility. It's important to remember that loneliness, as unsettling as it may be, brings with it an invisible strength. It strengthens you, creates deep roots, and allows you to align with what truly matters. The key is not to rebel against this feeling, but to use it as fuel to find the spiritual wisdom that will guide you. Maybe at this moment, you're asking yourself, am I alone for a reason? The answer is simple, yes. This loneliness is part of the divine plan, a necessary stage for you to understand the depth of your mission. In the end, this loneliness is not a punishment, but a preparation. By understanding that this isolation is a calling, you will begin to see beyond the surface. God does not choose the most comfortable, but those who are ready to face challenges that few would dare. And as you go through this process of discovery, you will also realize that loneliness is just the first step in a journey that will reveal a much greater purpose than you could have imagined. Loneliness as preparation. Loneliness, often seen as something to be avoided, is actually fertile ground where profound spiritual preparation takes place. Think of it as the moment when the seed is buried in the soil, seemingly inactive, but in reality, nourishing its roots before breaking the surface. Just like the seed, you too need this time of introspection and isolation to grow in ways that are invisible to the world. It is during this period of silence that clarity about your purpose emerges, and you begin to understand the reason behind the challenges you face. The preparation that occurs in loneliness is not just mental, but also spiritual. This is the time to strengthen yourself through prayer and meditation, creating an even deeper connection with God. By following the example of biblical figures like Moses, who spent years in the desert before leading the people of Israel, you start to realize that isolation is an essential part of the process. When you find yourself in loneliness, it is not wasted time, but rather a space of strengthening and alignment with the divine. During this phase, you may feel like the world is moving on without you, but know that this is a time dedicated exclusively to your growth. Isolation provides the opportunity to hear the voice of God more clearly, away from the distractions of everyday life. A practical exercise to make the most of this phase is to create a daily reflection routine where you ask yourself, what is God trying to teach me today? The answer may not be immediate, but this constant practice will shed light on your path and strengthen your spiritual connection. Loneliness also serves as a mirror, revealing weaknesses that you might not notice in other contexts. These moments are crucial for personal development because it is in the silence that you confront your doubts, fears, and insecurities. And by doing so, you become stronger. It's like an athlete who trains hard behind the scenes to then compete with excellence. In the same way, isolation prepares you for the challenges yet to come, shaping you to be stronger and more resilient. The beauty of this process is that, upon emerging from loneliness, you will be stronger and more secure in your purpose. When the period of isolation finally ends, it will be like a tree breaking through the soil, ready to grow and flourish. During this phase, you will have developed unshakable confidence in the mission entrusted to you. And just as the prophet Elijah found strength in the desert, you will realize that loneliness was essential preparation for the next stage of your journey. As long as loneliness may seem, it is not permanent. It is a transitional phase, preparing you for something much greater. Understanding this changes your perspective. You stop seeing loneliness as a burden and start recognizing it as a gift, a time of introspection that will make you stronger, clearer, and more connected to the divine purpose. By the end of this process, you will be ready to face the challenges that await you with new clarity and strength. Inspiring stories of the chosen ones. Throughout history, great spiritual figures have faced periods of loneliness before fulfilling their most important missions. These stories show us that isolation is not an obstacle, but rather a preparation for something greater. Jesus, for example, spent 40 days in the desert, facing temptations and trials before beginning his ministry. This time of solitude was crucial to strengthen his connection with God and reinforce his purpose. Just like him, other chosen ones also found strength in these moments of apparent isolation. Moses is another powerful example. After fleeing Egypt, he lived many years in the desert in solitude before being called by God to free the people of Israel. These years were not in vain. They served to shape Moses' character, making him the strong and resilient leader he needed to be. During this time, he learned to listen to God's voice and to trust fully in his plan, even when everything seemed uncertain. The desert, therefore, was the place where Moses found clarity about his divine calling. David, before becoming king, also experienced long periods of loneliness while tending his family's sheep. During these solitary hours, he developed a deep connection with God, writing many of the Psalms that still inspire millions of people today. Loneliness didn't weaken him. On the contrary, it was the ground where his faith flourished. He learned to trust God in all situations, from caring for the sheep to his victories in battle. David found in loneliness the companionship of God, which prepared him for great responsibilities. John the Baptist, another chosen one, spent years in the desert, away from the crowds, before starting his ministry of preparing for Christ's arrival. His time in isolation was crucial to align his spirit with the divine mission he had ahead of him. The desert, both literal and spiritual, became a place of transformation where he found strength to announce the coming of the Messiah. This reminds us that many times, loneliness is the place where we are transformed and empowered to fulfill our destiny. These stories show us that loneliness is part of the growth process for the chosen ones. Each of these great leaders went through moments when they seemed to be alone, but in reality, they were being prepared, strengthened, and equipped for great missions. Loneliness, far from being a punishment, is an opportunity for transformation. If they could achieve it, it brings an important lesson for us. We too can overcome this period, knowing that it has a greater purpose. Therefore, if you feel alone on your journey, remember these stories. They show that isolation is an essential step for the chosen ones. God is working in you, even when everything around seems quiet or uncertain. Just like Jesus, Moses, David, and John the Baptist, your loneliness is just a necessary stage before something grand. And who knows, maybe you too are being prepared for something extraordinary that you can't yet fully see. Loneliness as a space for divine connection. For many, loneliness may seem like an arduous phase, but it is in this sacred space that the connection with the divine becomes deeper. It is in silence and stillness that inner voices, previously drowned out by the noise of the world, can be heard clearly. Great spiritual leaders have always sought these moments of solitude, not as an escape, but as an opportunity to connect with God on a more intimate level. Just as Moses went up Mount Sinai and Jesus withdrew to pray in solitary places, these moments are essential for those seeking clarity in their mission and purpose. Therefore, loneliness should be seen as a moment of listening. It is in this quiet that one can discern God's voice amidst doubts and uncertainties. When the external noise ceases, divine wisdom finds space to speak. How about dedicating a moment of your day to simply stop and listen? Practicing meditation, focusing on a passage from the Gospel or a psalm, can be a powerful way to open your heart to divine communication. For example, Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." This is a reminder that peace and clarity come in the stillness. In addition to being a time for listening, loneliness is also a period to strengthen prayer. Without the distractions of daily life, one can fully surrender to this dialogue with God. Prayer becomes a source of strength, renewing the spirit and bringing peace to the restless heart. If you find yourself in a moment of solitude, consider intensifying your prayers. Set aside a quiet space, kneel or sit in a comfortable spot, and talk to God. You'll notice that in this silence, He responds in subtle ways, offering guidance and comfort. Loneliness is not only a time for reflecting on your own thoughts, but also for understanding the greater purpose God has for each of us. When we are alone, away from distractions and the opinions of others, we can reflect more clearly on the mission that has been given to us. Jesus, for example, frequently withdrew to deserted places to pray and connect with the Father. These moments of introspection were not a luxury but a necessity to stay aligned with the divine plan. There is a deep beauty in loneliness that many have not yet discovered. In silence, the soul calms down and the divine presence becomes more tangible. This is the perfect opportunity for a deep spiritual connection, where prayer turns into an intimate dialogue and the heart fills with faith. If at any point you feel like you are in a spiritual desert, remember that even in the desert there is water for those who know where to look. In His infinite wisdom, God uses these moments to guide and strengthen the chosen ones. What it means to be chosen. Being chosen is not just an honor, but a spiritual responsibility that carries with it a unique purpose. Many imagine that being chosen means living a life of privileges, but the truth is that the chosen ones face challenges that few can understand. In the Bible, we see examples such as Moses, Jesus, and even Martin Luther King, who, when chosen for their missions, faced persecution, doubts, and moments of deep loneliness. However, it was in this loneliness that they found clarity about their calling and strength to overcome adversities. The divine calling is not always clear from the beginning. Often it arises as a sense of displacement, as if you are walking a path that few around you understand. This can lead to loneliness, but it is also a sign that your destiny is different. Jesus shows us this when He said, "The servant is not greater than his Lord. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you." John 15:20. Being chosen, therefore, means embracing this journey with faith, even when many around you do not comprehend the depth of your mission. In many cases, the first sign that you have been chosen is precisely the feeling of disconnection with the world around you. While others seem content with the ordinary, you feel that there is something more waiting for you. This feeling can be confusing, but it carries a divine invitation to something extraordinary. Moses, for example, was chosen to free the people of Israel, but he spent 40 years in the desert before fully understanding his mission. This period of uncertainty was essential in shaping him into the leader God intended him to be. Being chosen is like carrying an inner flame that sometimes seems to isolate you from others, but at the same time illuminates you from within. This flame is the connection with the divine purpose that gives meaning to your life. It is a responsibility that, although heavy, also brings a deep sense of meaning and direction. Figures like Martin Luther King, for example, felt the weight of their mission and the loneliness it brought. But this same loneliness was the space where he found the strength to continue fighting for justice and equality. Although the path of the chosen ones is full of challenges, it is also full of moments of grace and wisdom. Those who accept their calling find peace in understanding that they are aligned with God's purpose. Even when the journey seems lonely, there is an invisible connection with the divine that strengthens and guides. The gospel is full of reminders that God never abandons his chosen ones, even in the moments of greatest difficulty. This reminds us that loneliness is part of the process, but we are never truly alone. If you feel different, out of place, or called to something that others don't understand, know that this is a sign that you have been chosen. And being chosen means that God has entrusted you with a mission that requires strength, faith, and courage. Accepting this calling is not easy, but it is the key to living a life full of purpose and meaning. As you advance on this journey, you will realize that the loneliness that initially seemed like a burden transforms into a space of growth and preparation for something greater. Loneliness as a companion of the chosen ones. Loneliness for the chosen ones is much more than just a simple state of isolation. It becomes a faithful companion throughout the journey. Often, being chosen for a divine purpose means walking paths that others cannot see or understand. This path, although solitary, is where the greatest connection with God and oneself is found. Jesus, on many occasions, withdrew from the crowds to pray and reflect. This time alone was not an escape, but a way to strengthen his spirit and purpose. He knew that isolation was a tool for hearing the Father's voice. Just like a tree that needs to grow deep roots before flourishing, the loneliness of the chosen ones is a time of preparation. When you are away from the distractions of the world, it is easier to perceive the direction that God is pointing. This period of isolation may seem endless, but it is preparing you for something greater. Think of David, who spent years tending sheep alone before becoming king. Loneliness taught him to trust God, developing a faith that would be essential when facing giants. Being alone for the chosen ones is not a sign of weakness, but of strengthening. When you are distanced from external voices and influences, it becomes easier to hear God's voice and understand what He has in store for your life. The introspection that arises in these moments creates strong and deep roots capable of withstanding future challenges. Just like Jesus in the desert, where he resisted temptations and prepared for his mission, you too are being strengthened for something grand that is yet to come. Those who are chosen often realize that their aspirations, thoughts, and missions are not understood by others. This creates a feeling of loneliness, but it is in this space that you can fully align with the divine purpose. When others do not understand your vision or your calling, it is not a sign that you are wrong, but that your purpose is different. Like Moses, who wandered alone in the desert before leading God's people, your loneliness is a space of clarity and preparation for the mission ahead. The great secret of the chosen one's loneliness is that, although it seems like you are alone, God is by your side the entire time. It is in the silence that He speaks most clearly, guiding your steps and offering the wisdom needed to continue. John the Baptist, who lived in the desert before announcing Christ's arrival, knew that loneliness was a place where the connection with the divine was strengthened. When you embrace this loneliness as an ally, it becomes the companion that propels you to the next level of your spiritual journey. This loneliness, which many fear, is actually a disguised gift. It separates you from the distractions and expectations of the world so that you can grow and flourish according to God's plan. Loneliness is the tool of the chosen ones, the place where purpose becomes clear and faith becomes unshakable. If you feel alone, know that you are not lost. You are, in fact, being shaped and prepared for something that most cannot understand, but that God has already mapped out for you. How to handle loneliness in a positive way. Dealing with loneliness requires a change in perspective. Many people see loneliness as something negative, but the chosen ones know that it can be an opportunity for spiritual and personal growth. When you feel isolated, it is the perfect moment to disconnect from the outside world and dive deep into introspection. A practical example is meditation, which allows you to calm the mind and focus on God. During this practice, you can repeat a verse like Psalm 23. 1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, letting these words fill your heart with peace. Another powerful tool for dealing with loneliness is prayer. Prayer doesn't need to be something formal. It can be an honest conversation with God, where you express your concerns, fears, and hopes. When you feel alone, prayer becomes a direct line of communication with the divine, providing strength and clarity. Additionally, keeping a spiritual journal can be an effective way to organize your thoughts and reflect on the answers God gives you. Try setting aside a few minutes each day to write down your reflections, which will help transform loneliness into a productive time of self-discovery and spiritual strengthening. Creativity is also a way to positively handle loneliness. Many great artists, writers, and composers found inspiration in their moments of isolation. If you enjoy painting, writing, or composing music, take advantage of these moments to express your emotions creatively. Loneliness can be a fertile space to cultivate your skills and discover new talents. This expression not only channels your emotions, but also creates a connection with others who may be going through similar experiences. To maintain balance during periods of loneliness, taking care of your physical health is also essential. Regular exercise, such as walking or practicing yoga, helps keep both body and mind healthy, as well as relieve stress. Combine these activities with a balanced diet, and you will notice that these habits strengthen your resilience both physically and emotionally. Loneliness doesn't have to be seen as a period of suffering, but as an opportunity for self-care, where you prepare yourself for what is to come. The most important thing is to change how you view loneliness. Instead of seeing it as a punishment, understand it as a time of preparation and growth. Loneliness offers a unique space for reflection, allowing you to draw closer to God and your purpose. If you feel that this period is dragging on, remember that even the chosen ones, like Jesus and Moses, went through long moments of isolation before fulfilling their missions. The key is to trust the process and use this time to strengthen your faith.